Thank you so much for joining us. Today we have a presentation about Autism Speaks services and supports. We are so excited to have you, Arianna. Please take it away.
Thanks so much for having me. Hi, everyone. My name is Arianna Esposito, and I'm a board-certified behavior analyst. I'm the Director of Lifespan Services and Supports at Autism Speaks. I have over 10 years experience working directly for and with individuals with autism across the spectrum and throughout the lifespan. Prior to joining Autism Speaks, I worked and developed transition and adult programming for individuals across the spectrum, and also as a BCBA focused on training and developing the future autism professionals of tomorrow. So today I'd like to just give you all an overview of who we are in services and supports. If you've been following Autism Speaks for some time, you may know this department as Family Services. In the last year and a half since I've joined Autism Speaks, our department has really gone through a transformation from family services to services and supports. I'll give you an overview and you get to meet the whole team who is responsible for putting out really excellent resources and programs for individuals with autism and people with autism and their families. And then give you a sneak peek at one of our programs that is getting ready to launch very soon. So with that, we'll dive in. And so welcome to Services and Supports. We are led by Dr. Valerie Paradis, who's the Vice President. She is a mom of an adult son on the spectrum, and she is autistic herself. She joined Autism Speaks a little over 2 years ago. And with that has really ushered in sort of a new wave for our department, and a really interesting and much needed perspective as we develop services and supports for our community. You may be familiar with our autism response team. They're also known fondly as ART. They are associates staged throughout the country that man our information and referral line that talk to families and individuals every single day to connect them to local community resources and supports. I'll give an overview of our community outreach department. So this our outreach department used to live in our field structure, but a little over a year ago, they've come home to services and supports, and we're so happy to have our outreach team with us. Lifespan Services, which is the department I work in, our grants programs, which are providing financial assistance and supports to individuals, families, and service providers, and then our adult services department. So here's a snapshot of our autism response team. They're located throughout the country. All of our cute little puzzle pieces show where our art team members are stationed. They operate in sort of a regional approach, so they're experts in their region, but they also are very well versed in resources throughout the whole country. Our autism response team has seen a huge surge in contacts and requests for information and supports during COVID-19, so much so that we've been able to launch a specific Autism Cares grant for those that are impacted by COVID-19. So like I said, it's our national call center. It provides federal, state, local information and referrals across the United States. We do take supports requested from other countries as needed. In fact, our very first COVID request came from Asia about 3 weeks before we really started to see a surge here in the United States. And that gave us an excellent opportunity to sort of gear up and prepare so that we had services, supports, and resources all geared up, ready for when the request started to come in. We very recently added live chat, so we have live phone and email-based contacts, and our live chat is on our website. You'll see it in the lower right-hand corner when you visit autismspeaks.org. We average about 5,000 contacts per month. We've seen an increase in this with COVID specifically. We have a financial planning specialist available that helps families and individuals that contact us with financial planning needs. We also have a dedicated line for Spanish-speaking contacts. We also distribute Autism Speaks toolkits. So we have 45 toolkits that are on our that live on our website. A cool new wave that's happening for our toolkits is that they've been updated to make them a little bit more easy to read, a little bit more visually appealing. And we're taking some of our toolkits, and I'll get into this once we in a little bit, for our transition roadmaps. We've taken our transition toolkit and really updated it to make it easy to navigate, and it's a pretty innovative new tool. Some of our really popular toolkits include our 100-day toolkit, which is for families that have a loved one that's been recently diagnosed, and it helps families navigate the first 100 days post-diagnosis. This one was very, very, very recently updated to include more resources and in an updated format that's easier to use. Another one is a guide to ABA. So for those of you who may not be familiar with ABA, it's also called Applied Behavior Analysis. As a board certified behavior analyst, I'm certified to provide and oversee behavior analytic programs. ABA, unfortunately, sometimes will have a negative reputation. I've heard things like, it's robotic, it takes too long, there could be sort of lingering effects after ABA programs. And the truth really is ABA is the only Surgeon General approved intervention for individuals with autism. And so ABA, like a lot of other interventions, the early days were a very long time ago, and sometimes misconceptions can come from lots of different areas. The number one I hear are robotics, and it's really like creating robots, or behavior therapists are very cold because they'll often see a child crying or a child visibly upset, and the therapist is not comforting. And so, like anything, sometimes you don't always get a full sense for what's happening if you're just a bystander. And so how I normally respond and have responded in the past for those is that, ABA behavior change is a slow process, and behaviors that are often associated with individuals with autism can be challenging behaviors like aggression and self-injury that put a person at risk to themselves or to other people. And a lot of those behaviors with autism actually arise from a lack of communication. So they're unable to get their wants and needs. And so when you may see a child who's crying and a therapist ignoring, they're actually helping to teach the person to communicate in different ways. Now, that's a general statement and just an example to share. And the other thing I've also heard as well is that ABA, it's too slow, it takes too long. Well, behavior change takes a while. And there are a lot of steps that go into producing lasting behavior change. And the truth is that ABA, it is really effective and we know that the results of ABA really do last throughout a person's life. And early intervention, it's very intensive, and when done with early diagnosis and early access to interventions, we know that individuals are able to successfully transition to school and carry on throughout their lifespan successfully. Our team also manages 3 closed Facebook groups, and we're launching 5 this year. And that really helps connect the community and our families to one another, especially during these COVID times where, support groups are moving online and it's difficult to meet face-to-face. Closed Facebook groups provide a really intimate way of allowing families and individuals. We have an adult autistic Facebook group that launched just a little while ago for people to be able to meet and connect and stay connected to each other. Here are our wonderful autism response team. It's led by our Senior Director of Mission Delivery, Lindsay Nader, and our Director of Art, Andrew Nelson. Andrew Nelson just joined us very recently, and we're so thrilled to have him on our team. And throughout our autism response team, we have 2 Spanish-speaking response team members, and we have a few parents as well, which provide a really excellent perspective for families that call us that are going through difficult times. So our outreach team, they're focusing on, regional events and activities, pathway events, and these closed Facebook groups. And so they're working really hard right now. Here's a little sneak peek for you all. We're launching our employment initiative, which is called Workplace Inclusion Now, or WIN, a really wonderful acronym. And our outreach team is really helping to connect our community to other community members, such as employers, for example, or other programs and supports, in order to not only help create a more connected, involved community on the ground throughout the country, but also to be able to connect families and individuals who may need and be interested in additional supports as well. And here's our wonderful outreach team led by our Senior Director of Mission Delivery, Lindsay Nader, and they're staged throughout the country. And like similar to our autism response team, we have 2 outreach team members that are also parents of, they have a child with autism. Lifespan services, so this is my area. We have a number of initiatives going on. Our Autism Friendly Designation is our newest program. This is a training that's been developed for customer service and customer facing staff to help promote an inclusive community for people with autism and their families. All of our content that's been developed in the last 1.5 years since I've been on the team, and since Valerie Paradis has taken the vice president position, have been co-created with autistic contributors. So what does that mean? That means that every program and resource that we're developing has been co-created with someone with lived experience. So while our department is led by a fierce autistic woman, we also have a network of autistic contributors that we work closely with to ensure that everything that we're creating is appropriate for our audience and is meaningful and impactful, and it's accessible. So our Autism Friendly Designation is a company-wide company training, and we have a couple of partners that we'll be launching with later this year and early 2021. Our transition roadmaps, I mentioned that in a previous slide, those are sort of a modern toolkit. These are really, it's a really incredible tool for an individual. It's created specifically for an autistic teenager who's going through the transition process, as well as information for families, parents, and caregivers that are navigating the preteen years. It's completely individualized, so the information that you're receiving, you filter based on your age and your support need level. We have 3 right now. One is on post-secondary opportunities, One is for housing and one is for employment. We'll be expanding these roadmaps. Right now they go up to age 22. This year, by the end of 2020, these roadmaps will be expanded through age 75 plus. This is a first tool of its kind to really provide information across the entire lifespan. For the roadmap specifically, we've had them tested with a group, and we work with a human factors specialist to make sure, who is also a woman on the spectrum, to make sure that the things like fonts, layouts, and the way that the slides advance and the information is presented is a way that's accessible for all. Our toolkits, which I mentioned before, we have 45 toolkits. Our Autism Speaks resource guide. This is our database of, it's a national database that can filter resources in your area based on your zip code or your city or state, depending on how you wish to filter. This is an ever-growing work in progress. We recently added a number of categories to support families during these COVID-19 times, and our newest one was added yesterday, and these are faith-based organizations that are autism friendly, that are and they've been added to our resource guide, and they're up and live as we speak. And then I also oversee our learning management system, which hosts our employment ecosystem digital trainings, which I'll get into in just a little bit. Adult services. Our adult services team focuses on the building and launching of our employment ecosystem, which we refer to as Workplace Inclusion Now, or WIN, that host digital trainings and hiring initiatives, including consulting services and corporate partner programs. We also launched just a few weeks ago our Community Advisory Council, which is a circle of advisors from incredibly diverse backgrounds, and it's represented mostly of autistic adults. We have autistic individuals from all over the country, from all different racial backgrounds and sexual orientation. Like I mentioned earlier, we have a closed Facebook group for autistic adults that's run by our adult services team, and it's co-moderated. So we have two moderators that both are on the autism spectrum. And then we also have a LinkedIn group for transition and autism. And here's our wonderful adult services team. We have on this team 2 parents who have young adults on the spectrum, and Ann Nagel, who's our human factors specialist. She is an autistic woman and really is leading the charge to ensure that everything on our employment side that we're creating and developing is accessible and makes sense for our autism community. Our grants and scholarships program. So we have a number of grants and scholarships programs. One I mentioned earlier is the Autism Speaks Cares program. We recently updated this in light of COVID to be able to provide larger grants for individuals and their families who are struggling during these times. I'll highlight our workplace navigation training scholarship program, partially which is funded by Stanley Black & Decker. So our workplace navigation training is an excellent example of the types of tools that we're developing for autistic adults and autistic teenagers that are created by autistic individuals. So our workplace navigation training program was created by 3 adults on the autism spectrum, and from start all the way through to the finish, including our user testing, was done nearly exclusively with autistic contributors. We also provide local impact grants for community programs and community partners that are doing really wonderful work and are looking to expand or replicate their offerings, and it's led by Serena Selkin. And so now I'm going to give you a sneak peek into our employment ecosystem, or as we're referring to it, workplace inclusion now. And as you can really see, sometimes, and even our team members who are on the autism spectrum, they'll face some either web trolls, or they'll encounter some negative opinions about Autism Speaks. And so as you can see, some of those are, we have excellent representation within our department, and in areas that we're working really closely with autistic contributors to ensure that we are being inclusive and accessible in the types of resources and programs that we're developing. It hasn't always been the case, but we like to focus more on the future and what we're doing now and the impact that we're able to make from all of your generous support and philanthropy throughout our time here. We really couldn't do it without your support. So here's a snapshot of our resources and programs. I talked a little bit about these before: our roadmaps, our autism-friendly designation, and our toolkits. So here we have a couple of sneak peeks of what the roadmaps look like. So here are the screenshots. Here you can see they're broken down by ages. And each one has an action, a goal, and action steps. And our focus there was, we wanted to really level the playing field when providing a resource such as this, such that even if you don't have access to, if you're in a community where you don't have a lot of resources, or a community or a network that you can reach out to for guidance and information, that you're still able to get high quality, much needed, just-in-time information. So this is really a planning document that makes it accessible no matter where you live in the country, and no matter what what type of situation that you're in. So and our three is broken down by our support levels, which are some, moderate, and intensive support. Our autism friendly, which I talked about, here are a couple of snapshots. As I mentioned, it is co-developed with autistic contributors. It's been community reviewed, and it's standards based. So it's based on the Center for Medicaid and Medicare guidelines. And then our toolkits. So here's a snapshot of our brand new toolkits. They're very visual, very visually appealing, and very easy to navigate. And so now here we are to our employment ecosystem. So it has three pillars, which are activate employers, equip people, and inspire communities. So our goal really here is in pillar one, which is activating employers, we offer consulting, digital trainings, and talent sourcing. And with this initiative, what we wanted to focus not on just providing training, a basic training for job seekers or new employees that are on the autism spectrum, but really a holistic approach, that we're creating communities that are well equipped, that are to be inclusive and accepting of people with autism and other neurodiversities. Our second pillar is equipping people. I mentioned our workplace navigation course. We're also developing a technical assistance series for colleges, training centers, and high schools, which will help adapt existing programs to autistic learners. And we're also providing virtual coaching through our autism response team to support employees with autism. And in our third and final pillar, engaging communities. We also include here our digital trainings, and then I mentioned these I spoke about our outreach team. We were hosting a number of pathway events. We're starting in Iowa in just a few weeks, which will help connect communities to employment opportunities. And here, specifically for our pathway events, we're really utilizing this, our time during COVID, where in-person events are not always possible and are difficult due to state and local ordinances, that this is a way for us to increase access to our events like no time before, because all you need is a phone, a smartphone, or a computer, or a telephone to be able to dial into these events. Before this, you would have to navigate transportation, or maybe take off of work, or have to find coverage for at-home responsibilities. These will be recorded events, so there'll be some that are happening real time live, and then some that are happening that will be recorded and you can watch later. So we're really providing information and creating connections to our community deeper than ever before, and much needed, especially in some more of our remote parts of our country, such as in Iowa, where resources can be really difficult to come by, even in some of the more major cities. And then talent sourcing, providing a platform that job seekers can not only navigate to find job opportunities, but also use that as a time for upskilling and fine-tuning some skills while either currently employed or looking for a new opportunity. And so this is really a snapshot of who we are as a department under our new moniker of services and supports. If you've followed us for a while, some of this information may be new. It's a really exciting time for us as a department and as an organization as we embark on these and tackling some of these really important issues that our communities are facing. Some additional areas that we're working on that are not included in this presentation are diversity, inclusion, equity, and access. And one of our first initiatives that we're working on specifically within services and supports is one of our community outreach members is our diversity and inclusion co-lead for the organization. And it is invaluable having her on our team and being a real partner with us as we're developing and reviewing our programs to ensure that they are providing equity, inclusion, and access for everyone. We're also developing a series of community resilience tools and programs, not only during times such as COVID or natural disasters, but across the board as well. And so with that, I'll take any questions.
Great, thank you so much. That was so insightful. We do have some questions from our members. First would be, could you give us maybe a list or just shout out a little bit more about your toolkits? What are they and what do they do?
Sure. So our toolkits are toolboxes or toolkits that provide information on a variety of topics that our community has requested or that affect our community. And they really run the gamut. So our most popular ones are our 100-day toolkits, our transition toolkits as well, which have been sort of redeveloped into our roadmaps. Additionally, we have ones that cover, that have been co-created with our Autism Learning Health Network. And those cover things like getting a blood draw, going to the dentist, going to doctor's appointments, and things like that. Our toolkits have provided critical information to over 1.3 million families and professionals. And we're getting, our 100-day toolkit, we get requests all the time for local community partners such as doctors' offices, pediatricians, civic centers, libraries that want to have our information readily available for their visitors and patients as they're coming. We have ones for all age groups, including young adult and adults. These include an employment toolkit and a housing guide. And we also have one that's called Is It Autism? And if so, what's next? And that's for teens and adults who may think that they fall on the autism spectrum and what to do. An interesting note while talking about that, we've had just in the last week, 3 young adults that have reached out to our team specifically on this area. So it's been really interesting and a neat opportunity to see how we're able to provide these resources in real time.
Wow, thank you. We have another question. Does your Workplace Inclusion Now program work in conjunction with your Spectrum Careers?
Great question. So our Workplace Inclusion Now is actually a new launch. So Spectrum Careers was sort of our early foray into the employment space, and our Workplace Inclusion Now program is a much more robust version. So our talent sourcing and our digital sourcing platform, we'll be announcing that probably in maybe the next month or so. We're just sort of finalizing some of our last minute items before we can be launch ready. So stay tuned for that.
It's exciting. Thank you.
Very exciting.
We have another question. Could you give a better explanation or tell a little bit more about the Autism Cares grants and how they help people?
Sure. So our Autism Cares grants are financial. The best way to describe them would be, a single financial assistance grant for someone who's in need. We've given these out to individuals with adults with autism or autistic adults that are facing, financial hardship or are, maybe at risk of losing their home or their benefits or aren't able, to afford groceries one month. So we're able to provide these a one-time cash payment to help with a difficulty. For in pre-COVID times, these would be a set amount, I believe, like just a couple $100. For COVID, they were bumped up just a little bit because of the intense financial burden that our community is facing during this time. And they're delivered through, there's our autism response team is the way to get connected to our Autism Cares grants. And so they, if that's something, if you know someone who may be in need, have them contact our autism response team and they'll be able to get that process started.
Great, thank you. Where would someone learn more about your technical assistance training for universities and schools?
Great question. So that, I was really excited to share our Workplace Inclusion Now elements, and our digital trainings we're finalizing the development of those. So we have one more in the pipeline before we're ready to launch, and then we'll begin developing our technical assistance series. So from there, we have a couple of corporate partners that have been truly wonderful community partners with us that we've been able to fund the development of the technical assistance series. We haven't worked out exactly where the technical assistance series will live, but as those developments happen and those updates, I will be more than happy to share those.
Great, thank you. What advice would you have for any of our undergraduate members who want to get involved, maybe in a career of supporting those with autism?
Oh, wonderful. I love this question. So for me, I can speak a little bit about how I got involved. I was really lucky enough to be a sophomore in college when a autism training center was opening up on my campus, and I didn't know a whole lot about autism then, but I knew that I wanted to learn more. And so engaging, volunteering, getting involved in autism programs in your local community and testing it out. There are so many different opportunities that are available within the autism to be able to support the autism community, and not just your traditional roles, right? Like education, behavior therapy, like I'm in occupational therapy, physical therapy, or speech. It's doctors, nurses, being in the community, whether it's maybe as a future employer or manager or recruiter of talent. There are so many different opportunities, and no matter where you fall with where your major is, whether you're in business or you're in health sciences or you're in liberal arts, they're getting involved, volunteering, looking to see if there are programs within your local community, and test out. Another great idea as well, and this was advice that was given to me early on, is taking a look at something that you're interested in and finding someone who's doing something similar in the autism field. Because like I said, the autism field is so diverse and vast, and there are so many different ways to get involved and make an impact.
Great. We have one other question. I guess this person has heard from different people. Should we use people with autism or autistic? What we see, both ways.
Yes.
What's the debate about?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And it's something that you may have picked up on during my presentation, that I have used both fairly equally. So person with autism or autistic. And so it really depends on the individual and the person. In navigating it, asking, how do they prefer identity first or person first language? Identity first would be autistic person, and then person first language would be person with autism. We at Autism Speaks have adopted we utilize both equally 50-50. But when speaking with someone or meeting someone who's on the spectrum for the first time, asking how they choose to identify themselves. Most of the time, it will you'll be able to pick up in how they're describing themselves. But if you're unsure, always ask.
That's great. Arianna Esposito, thank you so much. We appreciate all that you and your department are doing to help those impacted with autism.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you all for joining us today. Have a great day.